Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover, here live on the Let's Talk Sport YouTube channel, as well as our Twitter page. We're continuing and finishing our State of the Division series with a look at the AFC South. So last but not least, I'm joined by usual co-host Joe Hooson. Welcome back, Joe. Great to have you as always. And we've got a very special guest who's going to be helping us, especially take a look at the Houston Texans as well as the other teams in the division. We've got Carlos from the Just Fans podcast joining us. Carlos, welcome to the show. Great to have you here on Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover.
Hey, how's it going, man? Appreciate you guys having me on the show. Looking forward to being here. And yeah, I'm ready to talk some Texans with you guys and see how good or how bad we're probably going to be this upcoming season. So yeah, let's get going.
Good stuff. I guess at this point, nobody knows, right? So yeah, good to talk, and I'm sure it'll all be positive stuff from a Texans perspective. But Carlos, shout out for us and for our listeners and viewers. Where can our guys find you, and what shows is it that you run?
So we're our own channel is the Just Fans podcast channel. So on YouTube you can find us. All you have to do is go on the search bar on YouTube and type in at Just Fans 22, like you have it down there. Sorry, opposite side. Exactly just like that. You'll find every single episode that we have since we started on YouTube back in September. You'll get to see some of the really bad episodes too, which is funny. Hey, you get to see us grow from this. You get to see us grow from this to this. There you go. So it'll be it's kind of fun seeing it. No, it's been good. You'll find us there on YouTube, and you'll see us. We've had former Texans players on the show before too, and everything, and so it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, at Just Fans 22, that's basically where you can find us on X now as well. If I keep trying to call it Twitter, but whatever, X. So you can find us there, and then the one we're really trying to advertise now is our Instagram account at Just Fans Pod, and that's our Instagram account. So find us there too.
Cool. We'll make sure we get that in the show details as well, Carlos. But yeah, go give Carlos and the guys a follow. Some great content coming out of there. And yeah, great to hear that you've managed to get some kind of the old Texans players and stuff like that. That's awesome. Good work, man. Yeah. Cool. Good stuff. Well, let's get into it then. We'll have no messing around this week. We'll get into it. So, Carlos, you're going to have to hang on a little while before we get to the Texans.
Oh, yeah.
That's okay. So that just does mean you get to talk trash about the other teams that are in the division.
Favorite.
All right, cool. Good stuff. Well, on that note, let's start with the Indianapolis Colts. And we've got a little guide on screen as well, Carlos, to talk us through it. So, yeah, we'll start with the Indianapolis Colts.
By the way, I love how professional you guys compare to us. We're just like, hey, guys, what do you guys think? There's no PowerPoint presentation. We're just like just talking straight trash. But sorry, go ahead. This is awesome.
We're trying, Carlos. We're trying. Yeah. But I'll take that. I'll take that compliment. Thank you, man. Sure, that one up. Cool. Let's start with the Indianapolis Colts, who may be a franchise who professional isn't really the best word to describe them currently, especially maybe the way the owner's behaving. But let's talk through the Colts. So last year they finished 4-12-1. They fired head coach Frank Reich after a Week 9 loss to the Patriots. They won one game under interim head coach Jeff Saturday, interim not qualified head coach Jeff Saturday. They gave up the biggest lead in NFL history as well in a 39-36 loss to the Vikings in December. Big things that have happened in the offseason: change of head coach. They appointed Eagles offensive coordinator Shane Steichen as head coach, drafted Florida quarterback Anthony Richardson, number 4 overall, and more recently, running back Jonathan Taylor has requested a trade. Carlos, we'll start with you if that's okay. Kind of what do you make of the Indianapolis Colts in terms of what they've done so far this offseason and what their kind of prospects are for 2023?
So seeing all of this stuff that you have on here makes me laugh because I do not like the Colts. I'm like, yes, now you get to see what we were going through. 4 years ago, the Houston Texans were going through a horrible phase. Now we're on the brink of recovery. Now the Colts feels like the Colts are now. They've inherited what we were going through a couple years ago with our stuff that we have with Jack Easterby. So right now it seems like everything that could possibly go wrong is going wrong for the Colts. So yeah, you brought up a good point about their owner. Their owner, I mean, Jim Israel has always been kind of what's the word? Crazy for a little bit. for a few years, but this year in particular, he has taken it to a whole nother level. So it almost seems like the office and him are not in the same page. Like the owner says something, but the front office says we're doing something else. It feels like the only positive thing going for them is them hiring Shane Steichen as their head coach. I thought Shane Steichen was a pretty good pickup for them. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is one of the best, running backs in the NFL, and to the point where he quote unquote got injured, whatever, as during training. I honestly, I don't buy that. Just like a week or two before he announced that he wanted to get traded, I don't buy that. I think they're just sitting him up, but whatever, anything for the media, right? But the other thing was, like, even after he requested a trade, like a week later or two, the owner said he wanted to it should be a privilege to play in the NFL. That doesn't sit right with the players. Now at this point, you're losing the locker room too. So then what did it say? Like a couple days later, he wanted to save a whale for $20-something million. I'm like, you could afford to do that, but you can't pay your running back. Like, that makes no, you know what I mean?
Didn't the whale die as well?
Right. I was gonna say, hold on. First of all, I was gonna say, like, wait a minute. If you're taking the whale that's been in captivity for like 20-something years, and now you just release it on the wild, isn't it just gonna die? Like, I'm over here, like, I was confused. But the whale die, I haven't kept up with it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I'm sure I saw something on, I can't remember, Facebook or Bleach Report, something like that. Yeah, the whale died, to like spending all that money on trying to save that whale when you could have just,
It was on the, I mean, I hate to say it, it was at the end of its, it was done already. And so, I mean, you spent all that money trying to remove the whale. I'm sure the people doing it, they're like, yeah, sure, go ahead, and we'll take the 20 million. Yeah. But I mean, at this point, I just felt like, I mean, if you're looking at science, I don't think it was going to go into his natural environment and just thrive after being years of activity, right? Whatever. Sorry, dripping away from the. But back to the point, it's like, dude, like you spend all this, but you're not able to pay your running back that can probably make your team a lot better. Like that, to me, that makes no sense. So I don't know. It goes back and forth with the argument that I don't think the front office is in the same page with Jim Irsay or vice versa. I something's going on there. There's no communication. Gardner Minshew, I'm looking at the additions. Gardner Minshew, I don't know. He just strikes me as a backup quarterback. There's nothing really about him that makes me think, oh, he's going to be like the future star. I don't. Wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie. It feels like, from looking at all these additions, honestly, it just looks like they're just additions that needed to be filled, but nothing that's going to make their team better or worse. It just seems like almost like a mid addition, if I'm not mistaken. And finally, for me, the addition of Anthony Richardson on there. I mean, with Anthony Richardson, we always kept thinking it's a 50-50 with him. He's more like a project quarterback. I don't expect any good things from him. Yes, he's an athletic. He's an athletic. He's an athlete. He's athletic. He's an athletic freak. But I don't know how much that's going to translate over to being a starting quarterback for an NFL team. So I don't think he's going to be successful. I hate to say that, but I hope he does for the sake of his team. But I just don't see it happening. I'm probably in that 50% that doesn't think it's going to happen.
It's interesting. So, Joe, that was just going to be to throw it across to you, Joe. Andy Richardson this week was named the starting quarterback by Coach Shane Steichen this week. I still can't get that name right. Steichen this week. Yeah. What do you make to then Richardson kind of being thrown in from week one?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I think, like we've been saying, I think the owner made that decision. I think he was always going to start. I feel like the owner has the big say. I don't think Chris Ballard's making much decisions at the minute. So I expect him to be thrown in, like you said, with Gardner Minshew. I think what I was expecting when he first got drafted was Gardner Minshew might play 1 or 2 games and then Anthony Richardson comes in. But as the seasons go on and how the owner's been speaking about him, it was like, yeah, he's going to start, and it is a risk, and especially with how disappointing the offensive line was last year. They spent quite a lot of money on that. So if that's not in a great shape, again, that's not great for a rookie quarterback. And their wide receivers and tight ends are not, it's not inspiring. So again, having a rookie QB with not the best players around him, it could lead to a difficult first season. And yeah, he is one of them quarterbacks where it could be like a Josh Allen, a Cam Newton, and he's got that ceiling, but then he could also flame out in a year or two, and they're looking for someone else. I think he's a big risk in that terms, but why not risk it for that? Because if you do hit on that quarterback, you're set for quite a number of years.
Yeah, I don't expect to see GM Chris Ballard there next season. I don't think. I think this Colts team has gone from a team that had such a core nucleus of to be able to build around that you felt might have been able, if they could have just got that quarterback position right, push on and compete and potentially compete for a championship. They went down and have done the last few years, haven't they? The veteran quarterback route, whether it's been Phil Rivers, Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan last year, and it's just not really worked out for them. I've had a lot of bad things to say about Andy Richardson in the build-up to the draft, and I agree with kind of what Carlos was saying around it. He's a project quarterback. I'm really worried for Richardson himself being thrown in week one. I just don't think a lot's come out, and you've heard a lot of noise from training camp stuff about how much progress he's made quite quickly. But I just don't think he's going to have made enough improvements in the areas necessary to be able to play in the NFL. Does this mean they take the ball out of his hands a little bit and use him as a running threat a lot more? Possibly. And that's where I think maybe Coach Steichen isn't happy with owner Jim Irsay around his treatment of Jonathan Taylor, because Jonathan Taylor is going to play such a big part in this offense, to be able to protect Richardson and to not have him throwing the ball as much. We've seen him, he can throw 60-yard cannon passes and all this jazz, but his accuracy was a huge problem in college. His ability to get his feet set to throw, another huge problem. So it's an interesting one for the Colts. Carlos, throw it back across to you. What do you kind of think the floor and ceiling for this Colts team is in terms of a record for 2023?
So as far as the record is concerned, I mean, I don't expect them high at all. Out of the whole division, I see them in last place. I see the Colts in the last place in the division just because. I mean, if I look at the draft, they're the only one that really sticks out, or one of the few names that sticks out for me in that draft class that they had this season. I mean, I like that safety Daniel Scott. He seems like he's going to be pretty good. That to me was a really good pick. But other than that, I mean, yeah, you have how do you call it? Their Julius Brent also. It looks like they have they had a pretty good draft, to be honest with you, but nothing to me that's like, oh, it's going to be huge. But I think in hindsight, I think that these guys are going to be last in the division, and they're probably going to win. I'd say they're probably going to go 4-13 at the most.
Cool. Joe, floor and a ceiling then. Carlos has gotten 4-13. Where do you think kind of a floor and ceiling for the Colts?
Yeah, I agree with floor around 3 or 4 wins. I think they could have a disaster year and picking high next year to start rebuilding this team, which is crazy. I think you mentioned, Paul, last year they were one of the favorites to possibly make the Super Bowl and how different a year changes it. I think the ceiling they could, just because of the division and also the schedule, they could 7 or 8 wins is possible. I think just if Anthony Richardson is better than we actually think he is, and a few positions come back to where they were a few years ago, like the offensive line and other ones, they could sneak out 7 or 8. But I don't think they're making the playoffs. But yeah, I think they're the ones with one of the lowest floors as well, where it could just explode and it could be a disaster year.
I think again they play the NFC South, so I think potentially there's a couple of wins there that they could pick up with it. So yeah, I see it. I see it again. I think probably middle of the road. I see maybe 5-6 wins. Maybe we'll see. Byron can't join us today. He's got some internet problems at home, but he's sent across kind of his take, so we'll share them because of course Byron, we don't want them to go to waste. So Byron's got the Colts 6-11. Colts with the lowest floor, more likely in a position to draft Marvin Harrison Jr. in the top 3 and then have a winning season. Richardson exciting, but surroundings are very poor. Pretty good summary. Thanks for that, Byron. Anything else on the Indianapolis Colts before we move on, gents?
They need a new owner.
They need a new owner.
Yeah, they need a new owner. That's it.
Might be a good start. Right. Let's have a look at the division winners from 2022, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They won the division at 9-8 last year, and they beat the Tennessee Titans. in Week 18 to do so. And they rallied from 27-0 down to beat the Chargers. They won 30 in the wildcard round of the playoffs, which is the third biggest playoff comeback in NFL history. And they went on and lost what ended up being a close game to the Chiefs, 27-20 in the divisional round of the playoffs. Not too much going on in Jacksonville in the offseason, and so they had no major free agency signings after they spent $175.3 million in the previous offseason, and they franchise tagged tight end Evan Ingram, who had a much improved 2022. Joe, we'll start with you. Jaguars. The Jaguars obviously have made some real good improvements under head coach Doug Peterson, got to the playoffs and won a playoff game in 2022. What do you think their outlook is for 2023?
I think with the Jags, it's weird. I think they're one of the teams who's got the most amount of pressure this year, but because of the Jaguars, there's not much media around it. But if they don't win the division, that's more like a disaster, I feel like, for the Jaguars, with how they were last year and having, with Trevor Lawrence, how he played this end part of the second year. If he plays how he played at the end, they should win this division. So if they've not won this division, he's even like not improved, and he's not one of the, he should be top 10, top 5 kind of quarterback. That's what has been predicted. So if they don't win this division, I think that's been a bit of a disaster year, especially with how the division is. If they win another division, it'll be like, okay, yeah, challenging for first place. But I think where all the other teams are currently, where a lot of them is like rebuilding projects, and they're either at the bottom of the rebuild or they're still not quite there, a year or two away. Yeah, I think it would be a disaster if they don't win this year.
Strong take. I like it. Carlos, what do you make of kind of Trevor Lawrence kind of went into year 2 under coach Doug Peterson, and obviously it couldn't have been much worse year 1, could it, with Urban Meyer?
Urban Meyer. Gosh, that was a disaster.
It was a disaster. What do you make then to kind of the improvement Trevor Lawrence made from year 1 to year 2, and what do you expect to see out of him year 3?
Well, definitely, that's a pretty good example of seeing how a coach can either elevate you and help you elevate the game. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, I feel bad for the kid year 1, because he had to deal with somebody like Urban Meyer, and Urban Meyer, that's a whole different story with him. It's like it was just very toxic there with the Jaguars, but they got rid of him, and now they have how do you call it? I can't think of the name right now of who they have. Is it Peterson, right? Yeah, they have Peterson. So it's been, so I could safely say that Trevor Lawrence's second year was a lot better, and he looked more comfortable in the pocket. He was able to move around also, and he seemed like it was definitely a major improvement for him as well. So to the point where, hey, maybe he could be considered to be a top quarterback eventually. Still not yet, but eventually could look like a top quarterback one day for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't see much around him, and I think wide receivers were a big concern last year for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I don't think they really made much of an upgrade either. So it looks like they almost stayed the same. If anything, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I mean, they did spend quite amount of money last season or whatever, but they did get a little bit better. I'm gonna agree over here when they said, hey, if they don't make if they don't win the division, it's a waste of a season for them. It's a bust. So it's for them, the expectation would be win the division or bust. Like, I don't see any team right now in the division. And I'm saying this because it's just a terrible division. The AFC South, it's a bad division, and we're in it, but it's okay to admit it. So I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars win the division, but if they don't, it's just like, what are we doing here, fellas? What's going on? We didn't make any moves. We didn't make any major moves. Excuse me. We didn't. What's happening? So I don't know. I think this season they should be able to take over the AFC South. But if they don't, it's just going to be like the Jaguars are just being the Jaguars, So I'd say, yeah, I'll take them as to win the division this season.
Yeah, I think certainly the bookies' favourites, which we'll see, the sports books' favourites, which we'll see. I think probably a key addition that's not on there, which actually is lapses because it happened so long ago, is Calvin Ridley.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
Wide receiver.
Yeah, he was suspended last season. That's right, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so he was suspended for betting.
He should be, so
in.
he should. Okay, if that's the case, he should provide some more help for Trevor Lawrence with the wide receiver core. But I mean, at this point, but if you have one wide receiver, you still got to get somebody else to either break out or step up. So we'll see what happens with that. But I think they needed the most help in the wide receiver core.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the job that they managed to do last year. It still took a while to get going under coach Doug Peterson last year, but down the stretch, obviously they played a lot of good football. Yeah. I think they'd have to win 5 or 6 straight to end up winning the division. I think that's how they finished the season. So yeah, kind of playing a playoff game every week really down the stretch because they had to close the gap on the Titans, who looked to kind of have that stranglehold on that division. But
you see the record that you posted. I think can you go up really quick on the slide above. So it said they lost 27-20 to the Chiefs in the division round. I like that. It's a good one, but they do have Evan Ingram on there too, so that's good. That should be very helpful for them with Evan Ingram. See, what's funny about the Chiefs though, even though they won it, it's like even when we played the Texans, like we even took them to overtime last season. I was like, what? It was surprising to me, but that's when they were trying out something different at the time, around that time, because it was the Cowboys first. So last season we gave the Cowboys a little bit of the run for their money, and the Chiefs like right after, which the Chiefs won't surprise me. But then again, I'm not, it was surprising. But I think that for some reason the AFC South gave the Chiefs a little bit of the run for the money, which is weird.
The Colts beat them, didn't they, as well? Yeah, which is odd when you think about kind of how the season panned out. But
it's weird.
Definitely a weird one for sure, but I'm really impressed with kind of the change they've made quickly, and they almost like didn't take a year for the Jaguars to settle under Doug Peterson. So I'd expect them to have another solid season. Realistically, 9 games I think will win you this division. I don't necessarily see there being a big change in record for the Jags. Maybe 9, maybe 10 wins, and I think it'll be enough to win the division. But it's just again whether they can take that step when it matters. I expect to see continued development in Trevor Lawrence. It's really exciting. Can he take that step to be one of the top tier quarterbacks? Let's have a look at what Byron's got for us. So Jags excited to see what Calvin Ridley adds to the offense. We've just talked about that. Lawrence in conversation to leap into the elite quarterbacks if second half of last year continues progressing, which we've just discussed. Like the running back pairing, so Travis Etienne and I guess Tank Bigsby.
Yes, Tank Bigsby. Apparently he's had some rave reviews in camp. As
a running back called Tank cannot fail to be good, can he?
Apparently, it looks like a tank as well, so it's like a great name to have.
That's funny. We got a wide receiver named Tank, and it's a total opposite. He's very
but Tank Bigsby, I'm really excited. Kind of how that goes. Bigsby out of Auburn should be an interesting watch. There are some defensive concerns. So the number 1 overall pick as well from I suppose the season last, Trevor Walker didn't particularly make big waves, did he, in his rookie season? We'll see what happens in year 2. Especially kind of Byron's point was that Aiden Hutchinson looks a way better proposition, who went to Detroit at 2 than Walker, but Walker was always the project. So interesting. Byron's got the Jags going at 11-6, so that'll be enough to win the division. Joe, quick floor and ceiling on the Jags for us from a record perspective.
Yeah, I'm similar to Byron, like 10-11 wins. That's like their ceiling. Could they sneak out 12? Possibly if Trevor Lawrence is playing. So again, it's the schedule. It's being in the AFC South, playing the NFC South, and they've even got NFC West, which is obviously it's gone a bit down from a few years ago. So you've got a few wins there. So probably 10-12. That kind of a ceiling. I think the floor probably. I'll be surprised if they go lower than 8, 7 or 8. I'll be surprised if they go around that. So I think that's probably the floor for them, just with where they are at their current junction.
Cool. Carlos, what do you think kind of the record's going to be for the Jaguars?
I'm going to say it could either go between 9-8 or 10-7. But realistically, I'm going to say because we have a much easier schedule this season, I'm going to say 10-7. I think the Jacksonville Jaguars go 10-7.
Double digits. Good stuff. Any more on the Jaguars before we move on to the Tennessee Titans?
I would just say I am worried about their tackles just because I think, isn't it, Cam Robinson suspended for the beginning of the year, and they've just got rid of Juwan Taylor as well. Yeah. So we'll see how that works out. And I know they drafted Anton Harrison in the first round, but it's never a good sign when you've got 2 brand new tackles going into the new year.
Very true. Yeah. No continuity.
And
Cool.
and since they're a division rival, I hope the worst for them as well.
Cool. Good stuff. Not sitting on the fence. Straight in there.
We'll just put that on repeat after all these teams.
Right.
Yeah.
It's their turn. It's their turn to not be at the division.
Yeah.
Let's loop that for the rest. Right. Tennessee Titans. Let's move on to those guys. So Tennessee went 7-10 in 2022. They had a 7-game losing streak to end the season. It finished miserably in Nashville. Started 7-3, and then they lost a Week 18 game for the division against the Jaguars. And they finished the season with a league highest 23 players on injured reserve. It's been a bit of a tale for the Tennessee Titans over the last couple of seasons, injuries being key. Off-season headlines, DeAndre Hopkins signed to a 2-year, $26 million contract, and they stopped the fall of Will Levis in the draft. They drafted Kentucky quarterback Will Levis, 33 overall after his fall out of the first round. Carlos, do you want to kick us off in terms of the Tennessee Titans? What do you think their outlook for 2023 is?
I would love to, because I highly dislike the Tennessee Titans. So the Tennessee Titans, for those if you don't know, but if you don't know, you should know. They used to be the old Houston
lesson, Carlos.
Yeah, they were the old Houston Oilers. So that was the team before we had the Texans, the Houston Oilers. They were here since the 60s and the good old Reliant Astrodome. The days of the Love You Blue, Earl Campbell, Warren Moon, you name it. Then eventually our draft picks that we got in 95, we had Steve McNair, Eddie George, and then for the following year, guess what? They all moved to Tennessee. The city of Houston is upset. We despise to this day Bud Adams and his daughter Amy Adams, but obviously we had some fault too with our, they didn't want to build a new stadium for him. So, but we don't talk about that. We just talk about the dislike of the Titans. There was no oil in Tennessee. Absolutely not. There's no oil in Tennessee, and I'm sorry, but I don't remember seeing Warren Moon and Earl Campbell breaking records over there in Tennessee Stadium. No, I remember them here in Houston. They belong to Houston. I'm sorry, I do that just because I like to anger one of our co-hosts, Mr. First Down, who are great.
Cool.
Who's a huge Titans fan. That was just my little wrestling promo there. But no, honestly, even after I said all of that, I still wish that they go to the bottom of the division where they belong. You know what? Honestly, signing DeAndre Hopkins, I would have loved to have had DeAndre Hopkins back in Houston and come back where he was drafted. I don't think even after the way that DeAndre Hopkins left from the organization when we were having all those issues, I still don't think those fences have been mended yet. I think there's still some animosity, which is sad because this was a guy that was supposed to break like all of Andre Johnson's records that we had here. He was on pace for that, and unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and so he had to go to Arizona, right? So now with DeAndre Hopkins being back in the AFC South and obviously with a new team, I think that will actually be still more helpful for the Tennessee Titans now. DeAndre Hopkins can make a lot of quarterbacks look like even can make average to low quarterbacks even look decent. Brock Osweiler, back when the Texans had him, that was the one time that DeAndre Hopkins had like the lowest, I think it was below 1,000 yards with Brock Osweiler. That was the only season that he had below 1,000, if I'm not mistaken, because he was just an awful quarterback. So maybe this season, I don't know who. Most likely is going to be Ryan Tannehill that starts for the Tennessee Titans, from what it looks like. But I don't know. Somehow along the season, I feel like one of these two guys, Malik Willis or Will Levis, might go on in for Ryan Tannehill. Could maybe through injury, maybe whatever it is, but we might see one of these guys in the season there in Tennessee. So I think if that's the case, then it'll be definitely very helpful because that Tennessee is going to rely heavily on Derrick Henry. But now Derrick Henry is at that age, and running backs don't last long in the NFL. So, he has a lot of wear and tear on him now because Tennessee's used him like as their main source of offense really in the last few years. So I don't know how much they're going to rely on him, but most likely, since he wasn't traded or anything, most likely they're going to rely on him pretty heavy this year and just use him as much as they can. And, maybe adding DeAndre Hopkins is going to be very helpful for them. I see them in a battle with the Texans between second and third place. I think that in the division. So I'm going to say, Jacksonville up top, the Colts way at the bottom. And I think the Texans and the Titans probably second or third. And honestly, I think it's going to come close to that. But just because we have a rookie quarterback, let's say if Tannehill stays healthy with them and, and Derrick Henry doesn't get injured or everything goes right for them, I could see them being the second place in this division with, I would say, a record of probably, I don't think it's, that's a tough one. Probably a record of 12. No, not even. I was putting them way higher than the Jacksonville Jaguars. I would say probably 8 and 9.
Somewhere around 500. Yeah.
8 and 9.
Good point you make around kind of the Hopkins and Henry situation, because I think, you know what, if you want to put 8 in the box to try and stop Derrick Henry and you want to leave Hopkins 1-on-1 to the outside, they can make you pay. And if not, you're going to go 7 in the box against Henry, double up on Hopkins, then, Henry's going to have a lot more room to run. So it's interesting what defenses are going to have to do up against that Tennessee offense, because you've got 2 studs in Derrick Henry and Hopkins. Joe, kind of what do you think? How do you think the Titans are shaping up then, especially given the moves they've made in the offseason?
Yeah. It's always funny with Henry, because every year you think, is he going to do it one more year? And he does do it this year. But I do think the offensive line this year is atrocious for the Titans, which is they had one of the best 2 years ago. But a lot of the rankings I've seen from people who know a hell of a lot more than me on offensive line rank them last. 32. And even with getting Andre Dillard, it's he couldn't make it with the Eagles, and with the Eagles spend most of their money on both lines for them just to just let him go. I don't think he's going to do much really. So even with Henry and with Tannehill, if they've got an atrocious line, is that going to affect their game? And it could be. I am interested if they do start off on a losing record start with. Would they be tempted to trade Tannehill after 5 or 6 games if they've only won 1? Would they be tempted? Because I'm sure there'll be a few teams who'll be willing to give up a certain amount. Someone like Atlanta might give up even just a second rounder just to stock up and for them just to reset, because it feels like their kind of team, even if they do go 7 and 8, it's just going to put them in a position where they're not going to keep improving. I do like Mike Vrabel though. I think he's one of the best head coaches in the league, so I'll be surprised if he lets them bottom out, and they have got a good defense. It's just that, I'm not that excited about the offense whatsoever, and I don't think they're going to do too much. And they might even got Will Levis, but he's even struggling to get the backup position, I've heard. So it's not looking too good for them. And so and they didn't have actually that many draft picks, did they? So
no, great point about Coach Vrabel, though. I think Coach Mike Vrabel is one up there, one of the best in the NFL. I think what's probably gone under the radar a little bit is what he's managed to do to keep the Tennessee Titans competitive in the last couple of seasons. So I think it's 5 of the last 7 years they've won the division, but given what they face from an injury perspective, I don't know what's in the water in Nashville, but there must be something, because these Tennessee Titans players drop like flies from an injury perspective. They had a league-leading 23 players on injured reserve last season. The season before that, I think they used the highest number of players, or the most number of players in an NFL season. I think they used 90-odd players. I think it was 93 was the number. I might be wrong on that, but it was not more than 90 that they had rostered all across the year because of injuries. And it feels like the ship might have sailed for Tennessee in those couple of seasons, because actually they've had a core of a really, 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 really strong team. Tannehill's been so much better since he's moved away from Adam Gase, and in Tennessee he's been fantastic. With the runner of Henry, the line was strong, defense that was scrappy enough, and it's just not worked out for them. Will Levis is an interesting one. Again, he's very much like Andy Richardson. One, I didn't have a lot of good things to say, but I think he's found a good spot. Sit behind, whether he does get the backup or not, but sits kind of behind Tannehill, takes his time to learn. Don't throw him in. Can they fix some of his fundamentals? And maybe it could be the next quarterback for the Titans. Should we just check in with Byron, see what Byron's got for us? So Byron's got the Titans. Good defense, abysmal line. On that note, I meant to mention, so talking about offensive lines, quick promo. We had the opportunity to sit down and interview NFL O-line coach Jim Mouse McNally, 28 years in the NFL. That was our previous episode. If you haven't listened to it or watched it yet, it's on our Spotify. It's on our YouTube. Coach McNally is amazing. Go give it a watch or listen. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yes. So back to Byron. Byron said he was excited by tight end Okonoko. So he had the best yards per route run of all tight ends last year. He was interesting. He had a couple of kind of particularly good, strong games as well last year, and got the Titans same as the Colts at 6-11. George, back to you. Record for the Titans. Where do you think they sit from a floor and ceiling perspective?
Yeah, I think similar. They could get 7, 8, 9, between 7 and 9 wins. Like that's probably the ceiling. But I think they also could do, like I mentioned, if they just decide let's just blow this up and could get rid of Tannehill, maybe get rid of Henry, and then try and get one of them quarterbacks next year. So I think they could go like 3 or 4 if they decide just to be like, let's just blow this up and think about next year.
I just can't see Coach Vrabel letting it happen. I just really don't, because I think if that happens, he's gone as well. If that makes, I don't think they keep a full rebuild.
There were rumors about him like trying to go somewhere else during the season, but there were rumors. But sometimes the thing is, sometimes those rumors that go online, sometimes they actually do happen, and that's the thing about it. I can't remember where he was trying to go, and for college or something like that. But I honestly, if they do an all-out rebuild, I don't see Coach Vrabel staying.
I think if it came that Coach Vrabel did leave Tennessee, he would not be short of offers, whether it was in college or the NFL, because I think he's done a really, really good job there, and I think he's a great coach. You tell his kind of the players buy into him. I'm sort of seeing middle of the road again. I think I won't be surprised 8-9, 9-8 for the Titans. Wouldn't surprise me. And who knows, that might be enough to get you a wild card spot in the or sneak the division if Jacksonville aren't quite as good as we think they might be. Anything else to add for the Titans before we check out our final team in the division?
So I did mention their O-line, and I'm glad you guys brought that up because I missed that one. But the O-line, that's I think the biggest area of concern as well for them. So it feels like all these quarterbacks are going to be, they're going to be pressured, or they're going to get blitzed, all that. So and the thing is, this season, I know we'll talk about it a little more with when we go to the Texans, but this is where I feel like I think that it's going to be a battle between the Texans and the Titans, because the Texans right now, their front seven, their linemen, they're way better than what they were last season. So, but we'll get into that, I guess, when we talk about the Texans. But I think that's going to be a key factor deciding those games.
Interesting point. So Byron, he can't join us because of his internet problems. He's watching along. But quick point: Vrabel, a potential Patriots head coach for 24. An interesting thought.
I think, it's funny. I think Bill O'Brien's going to try to get that spot, and I despise that man too. It's like I hate everybody today. No, but he's given us good reason to hate to despise him. That's fair. But I think he's really trying to get into that spot. Even when he was here with the Texans, he was trying so hard to go over there and take over for Bill O'Brien, for Bill Belichick, and they ended up, the Texans did what they did, and they ended up promoting him more, which makes no sense to me, even though he was trying to tank his seasons. But, hey, whatever. So we'll see what happens.
There was just one on a couple of points around the Titans before we move on. So I really, the old line we've talked about being abysmal. Skoronowski, I think is the start of fixing that. You're a big fan of Skoronowski out of Northwestern. Surprised he went to 11. I was also surprised he wasn't the first tackle. Paris Johnson Jr. was the first tackle off the board, but I was very surprised that he was the third tackle off the board, because I think he's a really, really good prospect. And love Ty J. Spears, the running back out of Tulane. Love that guy. He was brilliant last year. He helped Tulane be a cover machine from a gambling perspective in college last year. But highlight plays from Spears. He's going to be really, really exciting to watch, and a real change of pace to Derrick Henry as well. which would be interesting. So I'd be really interested to see how they split that and how much Spears gets involved, because he is just a lightning rod for an offense.
But that's the thing about it though. Their O-line is bad enough as it is. How much of it can actually be, the running back position? Because we just know Derrick Henry is basically a lineman running through people. You know what I mean? Didn't matter how bad the line was. He was just like a lineman running through people that could run fast. After he's gone, I mean, if you still have an O-line that just doesn't, a terrible O-line, your running back's a regular running back is not going to get through that easily, because you're going to need an O-line to support that.
Yeah, and even with like Henry, it felt like he would run like 2 yards, 1 yard, 2 yards, and then it would like hit like 50. It wasn't like he was like a constant hitting the holes constantly. It was wearing them down just because how big he is. But
it's like a train coming at you. So of course, after a while, you're like, you know what? I don't want to get hit right now anymore. So
you take it.
You take it. Yeah. So I can see why that would work. That would happen. Yeah.
I don't envy any linebacker or trying to tackle Derrick Henry. Let's move on then to our fourth team in the division. And Carlos, we're about to hit up and have a look at your Houston Texans. So actually, rather than me give the summary, it's on the screen for people to see, but tell us kind of how last year went from your perspective, and what's the score with the Houston Texans heading into 2023.
From my perspective, I got to tell you, I try to repress those memories and drown them with liquor. So that obviously made it a lot easier. No, I'm just kidding. No, or am I? No. So they had a terrible record, 3-13. But so for most of the season, it's like, okay, as the fan base were like, okay, we get why we're going down that route, because we're tanking to try to get the number 1 overall pick, right? That was the goal in mind. And that's what we knew that was going to be just a terrible season overall, but it was going to be worth it to get that number 1 pick, in which we were very high on Bryce Young, right? So as time goes on, there's the last game of the season. It was the Colts versus the Texans at Indianapolis, where the Texans do what they do best, and they won. They won against the Colts, which is, and it would seem like in hindsight, it's like, wait, shouldn't you be happy? No, because we had a goal in mind. We were tied with Chicago, and Chicago did their job and lost, and they got the first pick, and the Texans ended up winning that game for some reason, and ended up not for some reason, I know why it was, but they did what they were not supposed to do, and then they got the second pick and kind of got themselves in a little bit of a bind or whatever. So the fan base was already disappointed as it was to begin with, and now it kind of struck them, because like, what was this whole season for then? And so Lovie Smith and we kind of feel like we know what happened. It was Lovie Smith. It's the weirdest thing. A week before the game against the Colts, he was called into the office to Cal McNair, the owner of the Texans, and they told him that they were no longer basically going to need his services after the season. I'm like, why would you do that? You would wait. Think about it. If your boss told you, hey, we're not going to, after this game or after today, we're not going to need you anymore. Are you going to do we're not going to need you anymore? Goodbye. Thanks for your services. Like, I could understand why Lovie Smith decided to spoil the fun for the Houston fan base, because they're like, well, they're not going to need me. I thought I did a decent job. Whatever. Bye. Whatever happens to you is no longer my problem. See you later. So I kind of understand that, but still, I hated that happened. But now it just seemed like everything that could go wrong for the Texans was going wrong, and that's up until that point. So the fan base is just equally as pissed off. They're upset as they were the entire season, because what was it for, right? Maybe like a couple months later, there's rumors that the Texans might get DeMeco Ryans. I was like, ooh, no, not my Texans, not the Texans I know. They would never do something that would make them look good, right? Well, specifically because there was like, well, you had David Culley 1 year, and then the following year you had Lovie Smith. And to be honest with you, David Culley wasn't we didn't take David Culley as a serious coach. Come on, the year before he was with the Ravens as their how do you call it, their wide receivers coach, and they were abysmal in the wide receiver area that season that he was there. So out of nowhere, he just jumps into the role of a head coach. I'm like, okay. So that didn't work. They got Lovie Smith because it was, out of nowhere. Like we're intense. They were searching for people. They were searching for a lot of folks, even during Brian Flores's lawsuit at the same time. I don't know if you guys remember, it was going through that that there weren't enough black coaches or whatnot. Well, at the time at the same time as that was coming out, he was interviewing with the Texans. So the Texans didn't hire him, but it was like, well, what do we do now? Oh, we got Lovie Smith over here. Like, he's been sitting in back there for a while. Like, you couldn't have just gotten him or considered him suddenly, whatever. But they got Lovie Smith. I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying they got Lovie Smith. I feel like it wasn't a serious consideration for Lovie Smith at the time. It was almost like you were running out of options when you got him last season. So you got him, you build him up and all that, and it was obviously a debacle. Okay, he's out the window. But that builds concern in the fan base and the media. How serious are you taking your coaches, right? Because you fired one after the other within a 2-year time or whatever. And so, well, enter DeMeco Ryans DeMeco Ryans enters the chat, if you want to say. And so there's rumors going on, and we're like, no way it's going to happen. We had a local radio host here who used to be a former original Houston Texan, and he does sports radio here in Houston, named Seth Payne. If you ever look at our show, he's at the he's in the introduction of our video. Great guy to have. He takes over your show because he loves to talk, and we love that. I was like, hey, yeah, this is great. I'm just gonna let you talk. It was great because he has experience. He's been in the NFL. He knows exactly what he's talking about. So he told us. So I'm trying not to prolong it. I promise. I know you got like an hour. Yeah. So he's so we have him on, and for some he had this really funny analogy where he was like, it's almost like when you're on, it's almost like searching for the right head coach is like you going on Tinder. And so you're swiping. We swiped right on David Culley and it didn't work out. We swiped right on Lovie Smith and it didn't work out. Now you got to take some time and think, take your own time and just focus on yourself and see what's going to happen. And eventually the right coach has to fit you or whatever. So then we went on a thing about, because we were also thinking about Shane Steichen was going to be there. There was a talk. There was DeMeco, Shane Steichen. I can't remember who else, but all these people. So it's like you have your potential candidates like you do in Tinder or whatever. So then finally he's like, we just decided to swipe right on DeMeco again and give him a shot, bring him back home or whatever. And so that was the beginning of the Texans doing the right thing. And after that, the fans were, instead of just being angry, they were just like, wait a minute, hold up. We just got the guy that had like the number one defense in the league, former Texan. Like, that's perfect. That works. And so we got him. And that, to me, I was like, they would never do it. And they did. And to make sure that those questions were answered about, well, what if you fire him again? Nuh-uh. 6-year contract.
Yeah.
6-year contract. They solidified that. So they were like, okay, it looks like it's going up the right direction. Perfect. A funny quick story. When we had Seth Payne, one of Seth Payne's last years was when DeMeco was coming into the league. He was a rookie. And so Seth told us that Seth Payne used to kind of control the defensive linemen or whatever. And so he says, I know DeMeco so well because of how great of a leader, and he's going to be a great leader for the Texans. The reason I knew was the first time he was there as a rookie, we were taking a snap during preseason. I might be mistaken, but I'll go back and watch that episode. They were lining up, and Seth Payne's like yelling at the guys, and he yelled at DeMeco. He yelled at DeMeco to get in line or something like that, and DeMeco just gave him a look. He's like, I swear to you, Carlos, that's the last time I ever told him anything like that. He's like, that look just scared me. He's like, even though he's always smiling, when he gave me that look, he's like, never did I ever yell at him again. He said he's got a leadership mentality on it, and that's what he did when he was, the leader of the Texans defense when they were elites at that time. So obviously it transcended over for him to the coaching. So now that was great. So now you got DeMeco, you're walking into this mess. What happens next? Well, you have a second pick. So to me, what we didn't know, because it was like between Will Anderson and maybe a quarterback. We didn't know because in hindsight, it's almost like you already have the second pick, so you're not going to trade up to the first. There were rumors that they were, and nothing was happening. So we didn't know until it was closer to draft. Then suddenly, I see signs that get Shaq Mason from Tampa Bay. I was like, hold up, wait a minute. You're starting to invest a little bit in the offensive line? Okay, so your gears start ticking, and you're like, hold on. Are they thinking of drafting a quarterback? Because why else would you solidify the offensive line first? You signed like Laramie Tunsil right after that to an extension. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you're trying to solidify the offensive line. If that's the case, you're drafting a quarterback because you've already seen what your quarterback has over the last 2 seasons. I don't think you're trying to invest too much in him. You're definitely going to get a quarterback. So that was the thing. So for a good moment, it was we're going for CJ because they're like Carolina had already done the trade with Chicago, so and they were in need of a quarterback. So you knew that Bryce Young was out the window. So they're like, okay, CJ Stroud. Well, draft day comes along, Texans get CJ Stroud. Okay, we kind of knew that was happening. What was surprising is the very next pick, because it was Arizona that had the 3rd pick in the first round. Out of nowhere, we were doing the show with Let's Talk Sports. Out of nowhere, the Texans were up on the board. They traded next year's first pick and a few picks or whatever it was, like in the later rounds. But then they get Will Anderson, which I knew that's the guy that D'Amico wanted. I think the Texans ownership wanted a quarterback and they got it. But I knew D'Amico wanted Will Anderson. And now you have both. Yeah. So
foundational piece right there in Will Anderson.
Yeah.
Huge part of that rebuild. And I think obviously we saw that it was the trade back in to get Anderson. In reality, it was the trade to get CJ Stroud, really, wasn't it? Because I think they were always high on Anderson. Obviously, we traded in to get Anderson, cost you a lot less than trading back in to get Stroud. So yeah, kind of played it really, really smart. Just to quickly throw over to Joe, Carlos. So Joe's a 49ers fan. So D'Amico Ryan spent 6 years there coaching as a linebackers coach and defensive coordinator at San Francisco. What can kind of Carlos expect to see from D'Amico from a head coaching perspective, or what do you expect to see as well?
Well, I think like Carlos already mentioned, he's the leader. He felt like everyone respected him, no matter if they were like a Bosa or whoever. Everyone respected him, and you could tell that he was the leader of that defensive unit, which was one of the best for the last few years. So I think he's going to be, he definitely feels like as a player's coach as well, where everyone respects him. He seems like one of them where he doesn't take shit, but also the players love him because of that as well. So I think, and he also we just see with the 49ers, how many defensive linemen keep getting paid. They come to the 49ers for a year, possibly 2, and then suddenly they're getting huge money afterwards. So I think he also makes players who may not be top-end players, but it puts the system in place where they thrive and they have a great year. So that's why I wasn't surprised with the Will Anderson pick, because with the 49ers, it is mainly about the line and the linebackers. That's the strongest position. The back end's not normally the strongest position, but they get away with it just because how good the line and the linebackers are. So I think he's going to be, it's like a serious coach. And it feels like one of them head coaches as well, where it's not one of them hires where you'll be like, if he has a rough year, they might get rid of him after a year or 2. He seems like he's one of them where he's the kind of guy where we'll give him 3 or 4 years and see where it is then. I think that's the stability the Texans need, just to be like, let's see where we are. Because I don't think this year's they're going to be, I don't think the defense is going to be amazing. I think it's going to be how the Jets were with Robert Saleh, which obviously under the 49ers defensive coach, where the first year they improved, but they were okay. But it was the second year where they were a top 10 unit. And then the year after, like this year, they're one of the best. So I think it's going to be a few years until you see the actual, what he gives Texans and what they give and how he improves the defense. So I think it's going to be, I think like a year away from seeing exactly what he's going to bring to the table. But I think he's just an adult in the room, and just to stabilize the franchise, which I think they need to, which it feels like they haven't had for quite a number of years. So I'm sure Carlos has said with the past head coaches they've had taking over, and yeah.
Cool. Carlos, then give us your take. Then what? Obviously, 3-13-1 in 2022. What kind of, where do you see the Texans? I assume improving to, because I think it'd have to go disastrously wrong for the Texans to have a similar God.
I can see the Texans, Houston sports in general. No matter what you're watching, whether you're watching the Rockets, the Astros, the Houston Dynamo, or soccer team, and football. I don't like calling it soccer either. I'm from Mexico. We call it football. And so sorry. Yeah. And so I just don't. Sorry, that's my own personal take. Anyway, long story short, whether you're watching any Houston sport, like I said, Astros, Texans, Rockets, Houston Dynamo, whatever, SaberCats for rugby. If you look at those, for some reason, all of the teams, they kind of like they win games that they're not supposed to, and they lose games that they're not supposed to. It's like a tradition for our teams. We play to the level of competition sometimes, and that's all around, which is weird to me to this day. However, there's going to be games that the Texans are supposed to win, and they're going to lose them. But there's going to be games that they're going to win that's going to shock everybody. Again, look at the winnable games that we had last season with Davis Mills, Jeff Driscoll, and Kyle Allen, which was the Cowboys. Like, the Cowboys had a solid defense last season, and for some reason we took them to overtime. Same thing with the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, I mean, not too much on their defense, but they have a high quality offense, and so those are two. Even though I despise the Cowboys, there's another team I hate. I think we all feel the same about the Cowboys. And so,
wow.
Yeah. Oh, right. I forgot you're a Cowboys fan. Never mind. Sorry. I forgot. I apologize. Never mind.
So good.
Yeah. Right. So, no, okay. You know what? I'm leaving. No. Anyway, so it's one of those things where, like, the Cowboys had a solid defense. Like, we'll call a spade a spade. The Cowboys had a solid defense last year. For some, we still took them to overtime. The same the following week. So there's some talent in this offense somewhere. It just needs to be found and exploited to the best of its ability. I'm looking down this list. CJ Stroud, there's a thing out there where Ohio State quarterbacks don't end up transitioning well to the NFL, and it's gone on for years. I'm hoping that CJ doesn't fall into that category. It's still too early to tell. I mean, he's only had 2 preseason games, and this last one that he had against the Dolphins, statistically, it doesn't look as good. But again, during preseason, the stats are they're not too accurate. Once you start getting into the regular season, that's when you start looking at that, right? But obviously, Will Anderson's going to be amazing. Juice Scruggs from Penn State has been very surprising, and I love that because we're using him as center, and he's just dominating linemen left and right. He had a few plays yesterday, and he was just bulldozing through people. So I think that's going to be a very good addition. Even though he's a rookie, we're asking too much of him, but he's going to be very dominant. And he's going to create some good protection for CJ where he needs, and also some great holes for Damian Pierce to run through. Tank Dell, this kid, he didn't play yesterday. I will tell you guys this. He was a wide receiver for University of Houston. Speedy, can get through those routes. I'm going to say this guy, he's a sleeper this year. I don't think a lot of people are too, he's going to be very underrated. He's going to surprise some people. So if you do fantasy, I think this guy's going to be a sleeper because in practices, yes, I get that it's practices, but even with the Dolphins, there was one particular practice this past week where he had 3 touchdowns in the red zone. So I would watch out for him. He didn't play yesterday, but I think if he had, that score would have looked a little bit more different than what it did. And from here, I'm looking at this list. I like Xavier Hutchinson. Could be another guy, another wide receiver that has been very explosive in camp. So watch out for Xavier Hutchinson. Henry To'oTo'o, he didn't have such a good game last night, but against the Patriots, he did pretty decently. So he's got some intensity, but I think there's still something, more experience here and there. Devin Singletary, right now I'm looking at the additions. I think he's going to be great because he's going to give Damian Pierce some great rest, and this way we don't use him like the Titans do to Derrick Henry, where they're just going to beat him up. He needs that rest. Noah Brown, experienced wide receiver, except he dropped a really good pass from CJ yesterday, so that was disappointing. Robert Woods, veteran present. I like that on him, so he's going to be fine. Dalton Schultz. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I know we took him from your Cowboys, but hey, that's going to be one of CJ Stroud's best friends, a safety net whenever he's going to be that guy where when CJ is in a little bit of trouble, little check down pass to Schultz, get you a few couple of yards, and that's going to be good. So I like him. I think that's a great addition. So, quick fact, Jimmy Ward, you have down there. There was one particular training camp, the one we went to, my co-host Hooson and I, we went to training camp, and we were watching them practice. It was cool. We were kind of far away because we showed up a little late, but there was a particular play where we were super concerned about Dalton Schultz because Jimmy, they threw the ball at Dalton Schultz, and it was I think it was a CJ Stroud throw because I feel like he put him in that position where you're going to get lit up by a defender. Sure enough, Jimmy Ward came in and smacked him hard. I'm talking about not Jimmy Ward. Dalton Schultz is a big dude.
Yeah, big unit,
But Jimmy Ward rocked him hard to the point where he was down, and everybody stopped practice for a little while because everybody was concerned about, oh no, we just lost Dalton Schultz because all these injuries pile up also in training camp. But the sound that we heard, like everybody heard it, and we were about maybe 50 yards away from them, and everybody heard it. The entire training camp got quiet, but eventually he was fine. They knocked the wind out of him. That's about it. But it sounded worse than what it actually was. So, but it goes with the intensity of Jimmy Ward, who's coming over from San Francisco also.
Yeah, so a key piece, right, Ward? He's been at San Francisco the entire time and longer. That DeMeco Ryans was at the 49ers. So again, kind of somebody in that secondary who's familiar.
He signed my ball.
Wait. Oh, nice.
He signed my, I don't know if you can see it. He signed my ball right there. You probably won't see it, but whatever.
Yeah,
that's very hard to get. He signed my ball at training camp. Damn it, I can't really get it home. Whatever. It's in there. Yeah, and I got CJ Stroud's at the bottom over here.
Nice. Key piece kind of there in the secondary who knows what kind of DeMeco Ryans is wanting from that defense. So probably a real smart pickup. I really like what the Texans have done, Carlos. I really, really do in this offseason. I think they've got the opportunity to turn this thing around quite quickly with the moves that they've made. I think the coach is a smart hire. Really love the character of DeMeco Ryans. Love CJ Stroud. So CJ Stroud, he was my top quarterback. Obviously, nice. I don't know anything, but he was my top quarterback. I love Bryce as well, but I love CJ Stroud. I think what tipped it over the edge was what he did in that college playoff semi-final against Georgia. And he was so close to causing the upset there and having Ohio State beat Georgia. I think maybe we're starting to see that change in Ohio State quarterbacks. Justin Fields, obviously, is there in Chicago now as well. But I do think CJ Stroud will be a really, really solid NFL quarterback. And he's got a lot of very friendly pieces. Dalton Schultz is one. He's great. He's been Dak's best friend in Dallas the last couple of seasons. He will be great for CJ Stroud. Robert Woods, like you've mentioned, Noah Brown as well. Don't sleep on Noah Brown. Noah Brown played such a good role for the Cowboys last year when Dak was injured. He was Cooper Rush's go-to guy. A really dependable, really solid wide receiver. So, I really, really like what the Texans have done. I think they're going to turn this around quickly.
And what's helping them out? What's helping them out too is they're using that West Coast offense. By Kyle Shanahan used it in San Francisco, and it's a very quarterback friendly offense. It can, and I think that's very helpful it's going to be very helpful for CJ Stroud's development moving forward. We used to have that back when Gary Kubiak was our coach. We used it a lot with Aaron Foster. It was very, very. It worked a lot for them because it's like run, pass, or whatever, but the runs and the passes look identical. So sometimes you'll see. I saw CJ Stroud doing a couple of play action passes, and they were pretty successful. So I was like, "Yep, that's exactly what they were doing." And so Matt Schaub used to do that with Andre Johnson. He would get us down the field. It's very effective, very quarterback friendly. The thing what makes it hard is you don't know when you're you don't know when you're passing it and when you're running it because they look so identical. So that's going to be a good offensive scheme for
cool. Carlos, give us your record then. What the Texans going to finish on in 2023? What's the record going to be?
So when I said the Texans are going to win some and they're going to lose some, it's going to happen again this season. They're going to surprise you with some of those. So I think the Texans, they're going to battle it out with the Titans by second or third place, and it just depends on how that works. How they how well they do against each other. So I'm going to say the Texans can either go 8-9 or 7-10.
Cool, right in that line, and that'd be a big improvement, right? To win kind of four or five more games than they did the year before.
Yeah, I'm not expecting the Texans to go to the playoffs. I'm not. It would be great, of course. I would take that any day, but I don't expect them to go to the playoffs. I think realistically speaking, and this is and don't get me wrong, it's very hard not to be we call it a homer about it because we love the team. It's just like, realistically speaking, based on all the odds that are against the Texans this season, they do have an easier schedule. I don't see them in the playoffs this season. Maybe in about 2 to 3, maybe 4 years at the most, we'll see them being contenders again. The one thing I will say is this: I think you mentioned that you weren't too high on the defense. I hate to say it, I will disagree with that. I think the defense will be pretty good this season. I'm predicting at least the top 10. Based on DeMeco Ryans' mentality, because even though he's a head coach, he's running that defense. But the thing about him is that he relates really well. I mean, remember, Lovie Smith was doing the same thing last season, which kind of scared me when I first heard that. But the difference between DeMeco and Lovie, DeMeco relates really well to the players. He was a player not that long ago, and Lovie Smith had that old school coach mentality where, I mean, last season, if Dameon Pierce as a rookie made a mistake, he would bench him and put Rex Burkhead in, which was to me very detrimental. But this season with DeMeco Ryans, he relates to the players, but when it's time for business, when it's time for him coaching, you could tell that mentality just changes, and he's all business. So I'm predicting a top 10. The strengths, the front seven are pretty decent. The weak part of the defense will probably be the linebacking core right now, because we saw a few of those runs with the starters with Miami, and they got through some yards. So I think still from last year, that's going to carry over with the run defense is still, I think, going to be the biggest weakness. The back end of it with Jimmy Ward, Stingley, Petrie, that's going to be and Steven Nelson, I think is going to be like, we call it a no-fly zone. I think that back end. So I think all in all, I could see a top 10 defense going in next season, and then getting better from there for the following.
Nice, a lot of optimism down in Houston. Joe, give us what you think the record's going to be?
Yes, I think obviously, the ceiling. I can see him win, because it was interesting doing a bit of research for this podcast. I was like, oh, you know what? Houston's actually got a good team. Like in my head, I thought, they have they may have got some good pieces. But I was looking at it, I was like, oh, it's going to be an exciting team to actually watch, which has not been the case for the last few years. I'm not high on even though I do like the additions, the wide receiver. They haven't really got a number one true wide receiver, which I think you do need to be. And again, that could be year after. And it's interesting to see how Bobby Slowick does as well, coming from a Shanahan tree. Is he going to be a Mike McDaniels, or is he going to be a Mike LaFleur, who wasn't the best at the Jets, and with a second pick quarterback as well. So it will be interesting to see how he works, and if it does work, because like you said, if it does, all these wide receivers and running backs are going to get plenty of touches, but it could go the opposite way. So I think the ceiling could be 8 or 9 wins. I think they could be in contact with, near the Jags and like similar to the Colts. But I also think there could be, it feels like a 3-year project with this team where they might win, 5 or 6, only like 4, 5, 6 games. But still, if you see positives from that, if CJ Stroud's looking like an NFL quarterback, if you're seeing, seeing the defense improve, and you're seeing you can see the progression. I think that's still a positive year, even if they only win 4 or 5 games. Because if they lose the games where it's like, well, the other team's just better, then I think that's fine. It's when you're losing games and it's like, because it's all disorganized and there's trouble within the franchise as a whole. So I do think whatever happens, I think it's going to be a positive year. Will that make it be in how many wins they get? Who knows? Like you said, it could be where they win some when they shouldn't win, and they lose some where you think, well, how they're not winning this game. So it will be interesting. I do have a question though, Carlos, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of Will Anderson, were you happy with how much they gave up for him? Because
to me, he didn't feel like one of them players where it was like a can't miss defensive player. Someone like Nick Bosa or who's the Houston got quite a few years back.
JJ Watt or Clowney?
Yeah, Clowney or that kind of player where it's like you cannot miss this player. You have to get him. I feel like Will Anderson, he wasn't that kind of level, which doesn't mean that he's not going to be at that level because draft picks are draft picks. But if let's say Houston only win 4 or 5 games and Arizona gets one of their high picks, then it's like, is that too much to give up for Will Anderson? Is it all depends on this year where they actually land for next year's draft pick? I don't know how you felt about that.
Right. Yeah. No, I understand. So there's like a mix with the fan base. I'm in a few X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, chats, and so it's almost like our fan base is kind of split and torn in between. I'm more on the side of I liked what they did because the Texans are never aggressive at the trade during the draft. They are never aggressive, and to me, this right here solidified the fact that, hey, we're taking a change and we're changing into a different direction now. We're investing in CJ. We're investing in Will Anderson. And yes, in hindsight, it looks like, we did give up a lot. But if this kid, Will Anderson, which looks to be like he is, I mean, again, this has been 2 preseason games, right? So you don't always want to be too optimistic or too high up on them. But, I mean, he seems like the real deal. If you saw that there was a particular play yesterday where he pushed, I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, Achayi, the running back for Miami. He slammed him down like it was a rag doll. And not only that, then he sacked the quarterback, and the quarterback fumbled the ball. It wasn't Tua. It was his backup. I think Johnson is the last name. I can't remember. But he literally got the running back and pushed him aside like he was nothing and brought him down. And then went after, wrapped his arms around the quarterback's legs, and the quarterback had to force the fumble. He recovered it, but still, it was impressive to see. So it's like they nicknamed him the Terminator. So it honestly, it is great to see him. I think he's going to be a great producer. I don't think he keeps. Fun fact: I don't think he keeps that number 51 on his jersey. That's why I haven't bought one, but we'll see. I think once the roster cuts, I think he changes that number, but hopefully he doesn't. But I think that's going to happen anyway. Besides the point, I think that was a good investment in Will Anderson. I like it just because, again, they're never aggressive, and this is what they're showing now. Hey, we're sticking with these guys and some backup. So I think that was a good pick.
Yeah, it's a big commitment, right? They've made commitments to the coach. They're showing they're making commitments to these guys that they're going getting so high up in the draft. So, yes, all very exciting down in Houston. Let's finish off the look at the Texans with Byron's take. So Byron's got the Texans going 5-12, and despite that record, he really likes the team. A growth year for them. Serious head coach for the first time in a long time. His take would be probably overpaid to move up to 3 to take Will Anderson. I think you've got to split it over both of them. My take is that you can't just look at it as a trade up for Anderson. I think you've got to look at it. He's for both Stroud and Anderson to kind of secure them both, really. But anyway, Stroud should be, along with Anderson, a foundational piece. Derek Singletary started, he had a bright rookie year, but then he should be better with coaching moving across to Houston as well, is his take. So, yeah, a lot of positives, I think, for the Houston Texans. Yeah. Let's see what that's translated from a odds perspective. So what the sports book and what Vegas are saying. So probably unsurprisingly, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars favorite for the division at -160. Titans next at +320. The Colts are +600. Now I was surprised that the Texans are this long, +800 or 8-1 in old money. What do you think of just the odds? Just quickly, I don't see the Texans being +800. I don't see them winning the division either. But I think they're certainly not the worst team in the division anymore.
Mm-hmm. That's where I disagree with it. I see that maybe the first 2. I can see that. And like I said, I think the Titans and the Texans are just going to battle it out. Realistically, I would say Jags, Titans, and then the Texans, and then the Colts. I would just flip the last 2 around. That's what I would do. For playoffs, for the playoffs, I would say I would just flip over the last 2, the Colts and the Texans. I just don't see the Colts doing well this year at all. I just don't. But I may be wrong, but I it's hard for me to see that, especially without Jonathan Taylor on the roster.
Yeah, and we yet to see what happens. Like Joey, any value you see in there in the board, whether it's for the playoffs or for the division?
Not really, because I feel like with this division, it's the only way you're going to get into the playoffs is if you win it. I just think with the other divisions, with the AFC West, North, and East, I think there's going to be at least 2 teams coming out from each of them, and possibly 3 in one of them. So I'll be surprised if whoever finishes second sneaks into the playoffs. So I think if you're not going to, like, Jags are the clear favourites, and I think they will. But if they don't win it, then I think it's a good punt to think for who the other team is going to win the division. So, maybe Tennessee.
Tennessee,
even could Texans sneak it in? That would be like plus 800 for the Texans to sneak it. You know what I mean? That's tempting.
I mean, it wouldn't be a stretch, right? Worst to first. This happens pretty regularly, right? Yeah. And you're talking again. I think
and it's the Jags,
Yeah, it's the Jags. Like, they're so inconsistent. You never know. Yeah,
the maximum number of games. Like I would say, you win 10 games, I think you've won the division. Like if you can get somehow 10 wins, 9 probably wins it for you. So
what's funny is that even 8 and like back then, even before they had 17 games, like even 8-8 was getting you in into the wild card. Like it's crazy. Yeah. Anything can happen. Anything can happen, really.
We'll see. And we'll finish off our look at the AFC South with a look at the win totals and to see if we've got any interest here. So we've got the Jaguars 9.5 their line, the Titans 7.5, Colts 6.5, and the Texans 5.5. First of all, Carlos, do you think the Texans can win 6 games and hit the over there?
Yeah, I'd say the Texans win 7 games at least, but I think that's a little under. That's a little. Vegas always likes to put our teams, like the Houston teams, like at the bottom. They did that for years where they're Houston Astros, and then I don't know where they suddenly they're favorites. So that's why I'm like, I don't pay too much attention to it. But honestly, I'd say I think the Texans can get to 7 games, 7 to 10. That's my ultimate score for them.
I like the over there for the Texans. Yeah, to find that six games. Can they win 6 games? I think the Texans can win 6 games. And the Colts under.
I was going to say that.
I'm big on that. Yeah, even money. Colts under.
I think they're rating the Colts too high. That's what I'm thinking. Without Jonathan Taylor, I could see this if they had Jonathan Taylor in there, but without him, it's hard for me to see that.
Yeah, I'm tempted with Tennessee under as well for 7.5. Yeah, so plus 110 because I could see them like just having a 6 or 7 win, or for them to win 8 games. I think that's a decent season for Tennessee. So I think the under for Tennessee and under for Colts would be where I'll be putting some money for.
Interesting. Well, we'll wrap that up, but you'll get in our, and this will be news for you, Joe, because we haven't discussed it yet, but in our next episode of Good Teams and Great Teams cover, as we are inching towards the start of the season, we're going to be doing our full futures episode. So me, Joe, Byron, we're going to sit down and share all of our preseason predictions for our futures bets. So watch out for that one. Carlos, we're just going to wrap up. So thanks ever so much for joining us. Just give us a shout out once again where the people can find you.
Yeah, definitely. I really appreciate you guys coming in, having me come in over here to your show. Like you guys do a great job. It's very professional as opposed to us. We just kind of throw stuff on the thing, and whatever happens, man. And so it's you guys have a great thing going on here. I love how you did the PowerPoint thing. I think it's great. It's very helpful for your guests when they come in. So y'all keep doing a great job. Y'all are doing good. I had a great time here with you guys. So I appreciate it. We got to have you on our show sometime as well. I know the time difference is a little different from where we live, but hey,
we make it work. Don't worry.
We make it work, but nonetheless, I appreciate it. But yeah, just find us on YouTube. That's where we're mainly at. So just like it says right here at the bottom, at JustFans22, type that in on how do you call it, on Twitter, on YouTube, and you'll be able to find us there, along with Twitter or X, whatever it is that you're calling it. Also, just type in at JustFans22, and you'll be able to find us there. We got a pretty good little following. We follow each other here, so they're always. I see their updates and stuff, so that's awesome. And of course, what we're trying to build up now is our Instagram account, which is at JustFansPod on Instagram. Find us, follow us. We follow y'all back, and that's it. We love to just put out content whenever we get a chance. So
Cool. Yeah, guys, everyone watch. Make sure you go follow Carlos and the Just Fans podcast. It's some great content. You will not be disappointed. That's it for us this week. We will be back next week with our futures episode. But that's the end of our State of the Division series. We've done all 8 divisions. How sad for at the end of it. We started it back in May, and now we've just finished it. And it does mean we are so close to football, real football being back, with the NFL back in just a few Sundays' time. So once again, thanks ever so much for joining us here at Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover, and we will catch you next time.